What's up, Todd? How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, Major?
No complaints, no complaints.
Awesome.
Besides, nobody wants to hear them anyway. You know? They pretend they want to hear them, but they don't want to hear them.
That's
they just
right. They
talk
don't.
crap about you later. Like he was just complaining.
Just keep them to yourself.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm glad we got this time together, and I'm here to explain my origin story. Basically, how I know what I know, and why I think how I think, and I've been doing this for a long time, and I can explain how things work on this planet and how things are on the other side of the veil.
Okay, so what? You been to another planet?
Well, one of the things that I've been doing is reading the testimonies of people that have died and come back, and they explain what's on the other side of the veil very clearly.
What do you mean by veil? I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just, for the people who listening, we want to make sure they understand everything, because this is a topic that could be very intriguing to people.
Right, and I agree. So what happens a lot of times throughout all these people living on this planet is sometimes people will die momentarily. They momentarily die on dentist chairs or in operating tables or in car accidents or drowning, etc. And some people that go or pass over and ask to remember what they see on the other side, and they come back and say what they saw and what they felt and what they experienced. And a lot of these stories are hitting all the same notes as far as having validity to what they're saying, because of the fact that they're all describing the same things.
Now, have you crossed over and came back?
I have not. And and I've talked to other people that have died on operating tables and remember nothing. And most of the time you don't remember anything, but sometimes you ask to remember. Say, I want to go back. I want to remember what I experienced here, and you're allowed that gift.
So what drew you to like trying to research this and becoming someone with information on it?
Well, I'll tell you what. This is my origin story begins. So it started in 2013 with the big D, divorce, and it hit me out of nowhere. I was happily married, and all of a sudden she was gone, and I was like, "What's going on?" So I ended up moving back with my parents, and my dad was Christian, and my mom was Catholic, and it was fine. But my dad saw how hard I was taking it. It was really, really difficult. And he'd always say, "You need Jesus in your life." And I'd be like, "No, get out. Okay, fine, Dad. I'm just dealing with this right now."
Yeah.
And then one time I was going through the divorce, and I just got off the phone with my ex, and I was like upset, unbelievably upset, like pissed upset, not sad, but more pissed. And I was just getting ready to get on the treadmill. I was walking out to the garage where the treadmill was, and my dad goes, "You need Jesus in your life." And I was like, son of a gun. And I got on that treadmill, and my dad went out in the garage also, and he was sitting in his little rocker chair out there, and I started jogging, and I was pissed. I'm like, "All right, God, do you want me? Do you want me, God? Am I your guy? Is this gonna happen?
Yeah.
Huh?" And then all of a sudden, I started lifting. And I literally became weightless. And there's tears of joy were running out of my eyes, and I couldn't stop. And then I'm like, "What's going on?" And I hit the stop button, and all my weight came back down to the treadmill. And I looked at my dad, "What was that?" And he's like, "That was God." And I was like, "Holy shit, there is a God." And it just lifted me off this treadmill and gave me an awakening. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, what am I doing? Because I've never been religious. As a matter of fact, I was kind of anti-religious because I didn't like some of the things that they were teaching or hypocrisies that I was seeing. And I'm like, well, shit, God exists. This isn't working for me. But I kind of accepted that fact, and I was sitting there. Later on in the day, about an hour later, I was sitting in the garage, and the garage door was open, and I was sitting there, and my mom had come out, and I was telling her what happened. But off to the corner of my eye, facing the open garage door, I saw movement, and I couldn't figure out what the heck it was. And it kept distracting me, like something moving out in the sky, and I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, hold on, Mom, I faced towards the open garage door, facing out into the sky, and my dad goes, go out there and take a look, and look up. So I went ahead and I walked out, and I looked up, and I could see my guardian angels.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I saw them. They're like little orbs of like silver, bright silver bearings. It's just floating, and I had hundreds of them. Now, they didn't have shapes; they just were orbs, and they were flying all around like a snow flurry. And I was like,
how'd you know they were your angels?
You just feel it. You just feel it. You don't know. You just feel it. And you're like, those are my guardian angels. Oh my God, why do I have so many? I had hundreds of guardian angels that's watching over me. Wow. And I'm like, at that moment, I fell to my knees. So, I'm like, this is crazy. So, I'm like, and my dad's like, you're gonna do great things for the Lord someday. And I'm like, go to church. I don't even go to church. How's this gonna happen, right? So, needless to say, I got myself a Bible. I started going to church, and I met some very nice people, but again, I kept running into problems with what they were teaching or what they were saying but not doing. The very last day I went to church, I went there for about 9 months. I'd go 2-3 times a week, trying to learn. Okay, I'm trying to do God's work. And the very last day I went, there was a man there who had been an usher. Very nice older man, had a bad back. He walked with a cane. He didn't lean on it too hard, but he needed the cane because he had a bad back, and he had been taking pain medication for like a decade. And he loved being in the church. He loved being an usher and being part of the service itself. And I came to church, and he was leaning on the back of his car just sobbing, and I'm like, what's going on? He goes, I stopped taking the pain medication because it was screwing up my insides, and my doctor prescribed me marijuana, and they kicked me out. They kicked me off of being an usher because they had judged him as being a bad human for switching to marijuana from his opioids.
From smoke. Wait, from. And
then I'm like, I consoled him as best I could. I spent every minute out there I could until it was time for the service, and I went in. And that same pastor went ahead and gave his little song and dance about how we shouldn't judge others. And I was like, that's my last day. I'm good. I'm out of here. And very energetically on the way home from that last service, I started yelling at God. I said, this is not what you are about. I said, I want to know the truth. I want to know how things work, not parables, not some vague scripture somewhere. I want to know the nuts and bolts of how things work, and not could be this or not could be that. Just, I want it. Tell me, because obviously this isn't you, and I want to know who you are. So I did that. On the way home, got home, did my thing, whatever. 3 days later, I ran into a friend that I hadn't seen in like 10 years. I just ran into him. We saw him at a restaurant, and I was like, hey, I know you. And then he goes, man, I just came to this website called neardeath.com, and I'm like, really? What's that about? He goes, it's a testimony to people who died and come back. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I need to know. So I went to it, got on my phone, went to it, and then I just started poring over everything and started reading everything and understanding how things work. And like I said, these people have the same stories, even though they didn't know each other, and they lived different decades, and they're different religions, living in different countries, and they're all saying the same thing. And I'm like, wow, there's validity to what they're saying. And I just gravitated toward it, and I felt that was what God is. And so I remember when I was reading, sometimes people would have a question, about is everything predetermined or is it free will? And I'd answer the question for them. And then they'd be like, how'd you know? And I'm
so
like,
what's the answer to that?
The answer is both. God knows every possibility, but does not know which one you'll be choosing for yourself. So, God knows if you marry this person, what will happen? If you marry that person, what will happen? If you go left, what will happen? If you go right, what will happen? God knows all possibilities, all potentials, but does not know which one you'll be choosing for yourself. So it's both. So I'd answer, and then people were like, how do you know? I said, I go to this website, that website, I find out here, I find out there, and they're like, all right, awesome. And they go, and and they start, I see him a couple days later, and I said, so did you go? And he goes, yeah, but the amount of information there is so much. By the time I figured out what you got to, it would take me months, if not longer, if not years. So I'm like, he goes, it's easier if I just get it from you because you have it consolidated and figured out, and all the pieces are creating a picture, a puzzle, a tapestry, so to speak. And that's kind of like, he goes, you should do that. And I'm like, I should do that. So I'm here now trying to keep everything relatable and understandable to as many people as possible. That's my origin story. So I started off making some YouTube videos here and there with my son. Had a good time doing that. Then my parents got really sick and I had to stop, and I was taking care of them. And they both passed last year. So now I'm back at it.
I'm sorry to hear that, man.
I'm here in Major Studios.
Yeah.
Talking to Majorworks.
Absolutely.
So, I have understanding of how things are on both sides and what our priorities here on Earth are. I mean, that's the big question of what's the purpose of life, and that's like one of the easiest answers. And the purpose of life is to work the puzzle of unconditional love. And that's the primary purpose of life. The second purpose of life is to create memories worthy of taking back home. Because God is a creator, but you are the experiencer. We are doing this as a labor of love for God. And all these memories that we take back home can only be created here.
So I have a question.
Yes, please.
I've heard basically we've chosen to come here to experience this. Is that what you're touching on?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We do choose. And not only do we choose to come here, why? One of the reasons why, I mean, many souls don't. And that's one of the things. You never have to come to this dimension to learn. You can stay back home in heaven and learn all you want to learn. And coming here, it's much harder, and a lot of souls are afraid to come here. But when you do come here, you learn so much faster because you don't directly feel God's love. You have to indirectly feel it through the people around you. So, this is the only dimension where God's love is not directly feelable. In this dimension, God only exists as far as the atomic level and doesn't go any farther. It does not interact with you any other way.
How many dimensions do we have?
It's like this. This dimension is here. When you go to the other side of the veil, all other dimensions are available because you don't have a body holding you back anymore.
Okay, when you say the veil, is that like when you die per se, or
when you die,
quote unquote?
Yes. Once you leave your body, your vessel, you automatically go to the other side of the veil because you no longer are attached to this body that's used as like a vehicle. This is our vehicle for learning unconditional love, basically.
In order to feel and touch, so we can experience this thing. We can feel, we can touch.
Right. We are literally, every day, our job is to exercise the peace of God within us through learning love. exercising the love within us. That is God. Our bodies are indirect representations of God in the fact that God exists at the atomic level. And we were made in God's image. The vibration of God will produce a vehicle or a vessel that has a torso, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head.
And that's Allah, right?
Yeah. So yes, we are made in God's image, and the fact that our torso fits this vibration, and this is the vibration of God, our actual human form.
Break this down. You said what did you say, the atomic level, or what did you say?
At the atomic level, yes.
Okay, so break that down for people who don't understand that.
Okay, so basically, you can ask any scientist, they don't know why electrons spin around the nucleus of protons and neutrons. So that electron is spinning, right? But it actually, that's how we always would draw that in chemistry as a circle, but it's not a circle. Those electrons vibrate. And God is an ocean of benevolent vibration. And people always ask, how big is that ocean? Well, that ocean is huge. It's so big that this whole universe fits within God's ocean of benevolence. All right? It's a benevolent vibration. And when you go back home, you don't meet God, you're enveloped by God. Like I said, God's an ocean. So, and think of yourself as a grain of salt within that ocean when you return back home. God's ocean is so big that every universe from every dimension fits within that ocean.
Wow. So that saying that God is the Alpha and the Omega,
there is nothing other than that. God's ocean encompasses all. That is an augmented teaching. I just gave explanation on why a biblical or an ideal of a religion is true. I augmented it, made it stronger through understanding. So, and one of the things that I found with Christianity is, another question I always get is, what religion is the right religion? Everybody wants to know that.
Yeah, answer that for me.
Yes, that's I love answering this question. God is benevolence. God is love. Every religion, every major religion on this planet has scriptures of love and compassion. So every religion can lead to the vibration of God, which is love and compassion.
So why is there so many religions? Because there's one creator per se. Do you believe there's one creator?
Yes, yes.
One creator.
God created us all. Yes.
So why is there so many different religions? I feel that separates everyone. It makes people feel, okay, yeah, well, God created us here, but if you're not doing this, so you can't go.
Right.
Listen, this all these rules. What's up with all
Right.
that?
Right. So basically, we'll use the Bible because we're in America and it makes the most sense. Not every writer is of the same caliber. Some writers put their own 2 cents in. A lot of writers did not write from the soul. They wrote from their vessel. They wrote things that weren't benevolent. So I've always told people, if you just focus on the teachings of Jesus, you are doing fine. You're doing great. Jesus was the guy. So just focus on that. Focus on the benevolent scriptures, because Christianity can be a minefield.
Now you keep saying benevolent. Help people who don't understand these words.
Benevolence is unconditional love.
The agape love.
Yeah. Yes. God, the love you have for your spouse when you're first married. The love you have for your children. The love you have for your parent. The love you have for a pet. Unconditional love. The love that your pet has for you, especially a dog. I'm not sure about cats, but that's benevolence. Unconditional love that just wants to please and be around you. God's love is also unconditional. So a lot of people, the way I explain it like this is, the Bible was written for the people back then. If you wrote a Bible today for the 2020s and said, hey, let's make a Bible today, and then we got all the blanks filled in, right? And then we took that Bible and took it back to the year 200 or 300, right? AD, they'd be like, what are dinosaurs? What are atoms? We don't know any of these things. Exactly. It wouldn't fit for them, because the Bible was meant for a people that didn't have understanding of the world yet. They were just getting around.
Well, speaking of dinosaurs, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'd like to know, how exactly do they know what a dinosaur sounded like if they weren't there?
It's all guess. But I will tell you this. When you return back home, all truths are known. A lot of people and that is also a true statement. And I will tell you, I'll augment that teaching right now. God exists at the atomic level, and everything is being recorded feeling-wise. All your intents, all your thoughts, all your actions are recorded, because there's no escaping God, because the atoms of your body are literally made up of God's vibration. That's how God's able to record everything. So when you get back home and things aren't so, and you go through your past life review, which is the first place you go to.
Was it like a boardroom?
Yes. It's a boardroom where every soul watches. When you go back home, every intent and every thought is known. So that's the first place you go to when you pass over. Is you go to you watch your past life review, and sometimes they're good. Sometimes you did a pretty good job, and you brought the vibration of people up. You brought humor and laughter, and not perfect, but you did an okay job. And then sometimes you were a very crass, mean-spirited, harsh person, and it can be very painful to watch that past life review. Matter of fact, I've heard of testimonies of people that have passed, and they asked the angels to stop the playback. Please stop the playback. It's too painful, because you don't just see what you did, you feel what you did. So if I'm had road rage and I go get in somebody's face and I start yelling at them, right? The pain that person felt and the fear that person felt, I feel. Because here, we don't feel other people's emotions. We can see them. We can see that they're scared. We can see they're upset. We don't feel them.
Yeah.
Back home, we do. So sometimes it can be very, very painful for those who have had a life of judgment and hate and fear. And so yeah, that's that could be tough, especially with the way things are with social media. If you go and decide to be a troll and to attack people, and the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. So I'm really curious to see, when I know Trump's supposed to be allowed back on Twitter, and it's gonna be horrible for him when he gets back home, because the first thing he's gonna do is he's literally going to attack 55 to 60% of Americans, causing pain and anger within hundreds of millions of people. And he's going to feel that when he gets back home, because his intent created it. All things are known back home. All things. All truths are known. So you can't say, oh, well, and when you get back home, you have no ego left. So you can't validate why it was okay. You can't be like, oh, well, they upset me first, so it's okay. No, you're not here to fix them. You have one job to do. That is to fix your own soul.
So let's speak on that ego. Is the ego good or bad?
Ego is It depends. Most of the time, it's not working for you. Because whenever you make a decision based on ego, it doesn't help you when you get back home because the ego is gone. So that decision you made isn't going to make sense when you get back home. So say road rage, that person cut me off and I went and I got in their face about it, right? And I couldn't, and I get back home and I realized that cutting me off wasn't a big deal. The ego's gone. So now I'm just left with me getting mad at somebody and yelling at them and causing fear and hate and anger. When actually the ego is the one that got me in this mess to begin with, but I have no ego anymore and I'm just left with this BS. So the whole idea of if you thought it, you might as well have done it, that's also a religious teaching, and I just augmented that. Because all intent is known back home. And if you thought it, you might as well have done it.
And where is home?
Home is where we live back home in heaven. So I know.
So heaven and hell is real. I thought this is hell on earth. What about the hell on earth thing?
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. Hell. Let's explain hell. All right. So back home, God is the Alpha and the Omega. There's nothing else. God's unconditional love would never create a place where you can only experience pain and suffering. God would never do that, right? God loves us unconditionally, every single one of us. So back home, there can't be a hell. And even if God, decided to make hell, you wouldn't have to go. You have no body anymore. You could just fly away. You can travel at the speed of thought. Because back home, God is everything, and you are a piece of God. So you can travel at the speed of thought. You want to be here, you're there. You want to be there, you're there. That's it. Even if he created a place where just suffering happened, which God would never do, you could just not go there. There's no body holding you as a prisoner anymore.
No limitations.
No limitations. So, second of all, I always explain heaven and hell like this. God is the creator. We are the experiencer. God cannot create experiences. He can only create things. We create the experiences. So, I always explain it like this. Say you have a couple sitting on the beach in Hawaii, and they're facing the volcano, and they got their binoculars out, and they're drinking pina coladas on their anniversary, and from off in the distance they see the volcano and they see the lava flowing out of it, and the gentle breeze is blowing their hair, and they're just having a great time thinking about the luau tonight, and then off in the distance they see some guy stripping his clothes off and jumping into the lava. God created the place. Somebody there is experiencing heaven, and somebody there is experiencing hell. Our job is to experience. And I tell people that sometimes. They're like, so Earth is hell? And I just laugh. Yeah, for you it is. It's all how you perceive things. God can only create. And the place that's called hell is a place you experience. It's a place where you experience pain. You experience suffering. God cannot create experiences. That's our job. So no, there is no hell. We're here as a labor of love. God doesn't punish you if you weren't as successful as you thought you might be or you wanted to be before you got here. If you screwed up and it didn't work out, it's all right. At the end of your past life review, God doesn't judge you. God asks you, are you ready to come back? And we always say no. We almost always say no, because we see the potentials of coming back and how much better of a job we can do, potentially. Because not only does God know all potentials for our life, he knows all your potentials for all your potential lives. So God knows everything. Always has.
That's pretty deep, man. It makes it, ironically, it makes sense. When I think it depends on what type of mind frame you have, because
Yes.
I completely agree and believe the stuff that you're referring to, and that's before I even met you. And it's just ironic that just Google bringing people together to be able to talk about this, because this is a taboo type subject.
Yes, it is.
It's very taboo, and people think you're crazy if you talk
Right.
about it and this and that. But I know what you feel. I know when you feel it, you know it's real. Like, you can feel inside. It's all
Right,
about
and everybody's
feelings.
like, "Well, I'm only coming here once." And I'll give a prime example. I'm only coming here once, and they're like, "You're not going to shortchange God. You never do. You always want to give the most developed soul back to God as possible. You're not going to come here once. Usually, the people that come here the first couple of times, they're very much driven by their vessel, because their soul can't handle what they're led by their vessel, and the vessel is their body is led by fear. And then when fear comes ego, and you mix the ego, and you got anger and hate and all these other things. And most of the time, the first time a soul is here, they're in trouble with the law. Maybe the first 5 times a soul is here, they're in trouble with the law. They just can't get over the fear.
What do you mean the law? You mean the law of
Like, they're in prison.
planet?
They're
Or-
in prison. They're doing things that are based in fear and ego, which anger, hate leads to murder, leads to greed, leads to all kinds of things. A lot of the times, the first time a soul's here, they can't overcome the shortcomings of their vessel. So as a soul matures, coming here lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, they are able to overcome their vessel and put it in check. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have moderation here. I'm going to, and I'm not going to hate. I'm putting my ego down here. I'm going to learn to turn the other cheek. You're not going to learn to turn the other cheek the first few times you're here. That's something that's earned over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. And my mom, bless her heart, she's back home with Dad, and but she's like, "I'm not coming back to this place. This place sucks." And I'm like, okay, Mom. I say, I tell you what. How about if you were like in heaven, for like where we actually live? That's where our homes are. That's where we live. That's where our homes are. That's our actual name. What we have back home, that's our actual name, the soul name, not our vessel name. I'm Todd here, but the name of my soul is not Todd. And we don't speak any language. We speak in light.
What do you mean?
The language spoken is a language spoken in light. There's no way to pronounce it here. And that's a lot of the people that come back say, yeah, my actual name is spoken in light. It's not whoever I am this lifetime. This is just my vessel's name. It's not my soul's name. So I always tell my mom, I said, okay, how about this, Mom? Say you spent 100,000 years in heaven. Would you want to come back after all that time? Would you want to come back and fall in love with Dad again? She's like, maybe. I'm like, all right then. I'll see you in about 6 months. That's the way it works, because time in heaven is circular and time here is linear. I remember one testimony of somebody who had died. He had fallen through the ice in a lake, and he had drowned. He'd been dead for 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And when he came back, he goes, I felt like I was in heaven for 400 years. Time there isn't the same here. Most of the time, people will die for 10, 15 seconds. Be like, yeah, I was in heaven for 3-4 weeks. I did this, I did that, I did this, and I did that. I did all these different things. Went to see all these people, and I'm like, time there is circular, and here it's linear. So we spend huge amounts of time in between lifetimes in heaven. And here, it's usually a soul will come back between 4 and 6 months later. But the most important thing is when you come to the realization, and that's the real crux of what I try to teach people, is when you realize we're here hundreds of times if you plan your lives appropriately. People are like, well, how can you do it? And, do we choose? Yes, we do choose. We choose our parents. We choose our ethnicity. We choose our country. We choose everything, because the more we plan out our lives, the less lifetimes it takes to get to that point where you've overcome fear and ego. If you don't plan it out, it may take 500 times, but if you plan it out appropriately, it's usually just a few hundred times, and then you're done. You've planned it out and you accomplished it. But when you also have the realization that we have multiple lives, and we come back as many times as that, not just once or twice, then you realize, oh my God. So that kind of explains why maybe somebody might be a racist and somebody is not a racist. Sometimes you see, white people supporting the African American community, and some do not and are actually very much against it. Well, that white person was probably African American at one time, or been enough other nationalities or ethnicities to where it's grown to learn acceptance and compassion for all ethnicities. You can't judge a book by its cover, but you can see the vibration of a soul, usually within a few minutes.
Immediately.
So yeah, that's why, and that's not only that. I mean, I have one friend, and she has 4 sons. One's a viable piece of society, part of society, and the other 3 are in jail. Why? The same parents. One soul's a little older, 3 souls were a little younger, and they weren't able to overcome ego and fear. So another question I always get is, so I can come back as a cat or a dog? No. God has been developing these vessels for a very long time, and the DNA of our vessels can handle a soul as large as ours. You cannot go into a dog, you cannot go into a cat, you would vaporize it immediately. Our souls are too big for the DNA of a dog or a cat. It just would not work. Now, do animals reincarnate is another question I always get, and the question is no, unless they've been touched by the love of a human. So, horse out in the wild? Probably not. A Mustang running out in the open prairies? Probably not reincarnate. A horse that was loved by its owner and trainer or whatever might choose to come back to experience that love again. Same with a dog or a cat or a parakeet or whatever. Yes, animals that are touched by the love of a human may want to come back, and sometimes they do. But animals living in the wild, a raccoon living out in the forest, probably not.
Yeah, that kind of, it almost I don't want to say makes sense, but makes sense because, like, the animal got the feeling from the human, because people treat their animals like their kids sometimes.
Yes, they do. And sometimes they don't, and those animals probably choose not to come back. So yeah, that's one of the things I like to explain to people is, and then you and I had talked earlier about homosexuality, and I need to get that out because a lot of people are like, it's not a choice, and it's a choice, not you weren't born that way. Yeah, they are born that way, and now that you've come to the realization that there maybe is a possibility that we have multiple lives. Yeah, you can't develop your life, you can't develop your soul in just one gender. There's 2 sides of your soul.
I got some on this because that's a good way you touch on it, because I do believe that maybe some people were born that way, because like when I was growing up, you could tell some of the guys who kind of had those mannerisms and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
But then what about today's day and time where it seems like all the media is basically making it a choice?
Yeah.
Because think when I grew up, the only person who I thought was gay was maybe like Little Richard or Richard Simmons, I thought, what I mean?
Right.
But now it's like IKEA commercials. You got two people kissing. You got this. You got that. And I think to each his own. So I don't have a problem. But I'm just saying I think that they're making the choice. Like you have kids growing up watching TV, and they say, okay, what do you want to be? You want to be this. You want to be that. As opposed to some people who really have it inside. What do you think about that?
Yes, I understand fully. So one of the reasons, I mean, ideally, you want to develop your soul on both sides pretty evenly. Maybe here a man twice, and then a female twice, and then a man twice, and a female twice. Keeping it pretty even. But it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it takes a very long time. I mean, it's been very difficult for souls to make the adjustment over to another gender for fear of being homosexual. There are some places you still can't be homosexual. You'll die, like Iran. You can't go there. They'll kill you. So, a lot of times it was very difficult for souls, and that's why they're so one-sided in their development. And you have men that are just like Cro-Magnon. They're just like alpha males. Just they've been a man 20 times because they couldn't go anywhere safely, right? To make the transition. Now it's acceptable. So now you see way more people like, okay, I'm done being a man 13 times in a row. I can finally do it and not be ostracized or killed. So you see a lot more souls making the jump now to the new gender and being homosexual because it's more acceptable. Now that's kind of like, okay, everybody's looking around. It's kind of a green light right now. Okay, let's all do it right now. So you see a lot more people that are identifying with the other gender that they're actually born in. They're born as a male, but they identify with a female, or vice versa, because now it's okay. So a lot of the souls are like, okay, wiping the sweat from their forehead and be like, okay, we can do it now. So now you see a lot more people that are homosexual.
So you're saying when you're on the other side of the veil and you're after your meeting and they say you want to come back, you get to pick everything. Like, I want to be a girl this time. I want to be this. These are my parents, this and that. You would do, that's what that's about?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So why would someone pick someone, like, let's say, okay, why wouldn't we all just pick rich parents? Right? Okay. I mean, come on, that's a good one, right?
Oh, yeah, man. I like that one. So, yes, it's real simple. Because we're back home, there is no ego, and there is no money, there is no greed. So, when we plan things out, we plan them out to develop our soul the best. Because back home, we know our objective. Here, we don't. Here, we're like, hey, our objective is to get rich, right? To get rich and get a hot wife, whatever, right? But no, that's not really our objective. Capitalism will tell you that, right? Ego will tell you that, but that's not our objective back home. We know what the objective is. The objective is to develop our soul. Now, sometimes when you're here to learn about material excess, you need to have rich parents to learn about material excess. And a lot of times, people that are very rich, right, don't learn appreciation and become materialistic, and it drives their ego. Right? The next lifetime, after seeing all the BS that caused, a lot of times they'll ask. God never does anything to you. He only does things for you. Right?
Yeah.
They'll ask, I need a chapter in my life where I'm homeless. I need a chapter in my life where I'm destitute. If you actually talk to these people, it was an act of God that got them there. It was like this happened, and then that happened all at the same time within a 2-day span, and now they're living in their car. It wasn't done to them. Remember, the whole objective of being here is to develop our soul, not to accumulate wealth, because wealth has no value back home. Our whole objective is to develop our soul, and now they're getting a crash course in soul development. So I see beauty when I see homelessness. Not because it's visually beautiful, but because I know that not only are they learning, they might not know they asked, but they did, to have this situation put on them to develop their soul. But not only are they learning, but they're teaching us compassion as we look at them. They're teaching us appreciation. At the same time, a homeless person is the learner and the teacher at the same time.
It sounds about right. Because they definitely have a lot of experience with that. So I guess that you say like there's no egos, this and that. So you're not thinking about the riches and everything. You're just thinking about how can my soul be the best soul it could be.
Right. Our currency are our experiences. That's our currency back home. There was one. I remember one testimony of one lady saying, "How come that soul over there is going in with all those the entourage? That's entourage of angels." And their angel had said, because that person did a lot of stuff. They're like, woohoo! What do we have to work with now? And another crazy thing is, you know what? I'm not going down that road. But yeah, that's why our job is to create experience, and you see this a lot with the millennials and Generation Z. They're like,
go down the road.
I want a little bit smaller house. I want a more sensible car. I want to create memories. I want to travel. I want to see the world. They know what's right. They don't even know they know it's right, but that is what's right. You don't take your house back home. You take the experiences within it. You don't take the car back home. You take the experiences within it.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
I've heard that. Like,
right.
They say the memories are what's priceless. Like,
exactly. And people are like, I remember seeing a TED Talk. Well, I have memories. They only last a lifetime. No, memories do not last a lifetime. They do not. They last an eternity. So, when you're watching your past life review, and you have it like on it's like a screen, I guess. That's how they describe it, with text. Universal language on the bottom. To the left, there's also a screen showing your past lives. So that the one in front of you is showing your life you just had. The one on the left is showing past lives. The one on the right is showing future potentials, and they're showing all at the same time. And people are like, I wouldn't be able to pay attention to all three at the same time. And I'm like, yes, because you're in a vessel that restricts your abilities. When you're back home, you can do everything. You can do anything. We're pieces of God. So we can see all three at the same time and feel all three at the same time. So
what do we look like? Those light orbs that you said were like the guardian angels? Or?
Yeah. You can take any form of any life you've had when you're back home. But you don't have feet, which is weirdest thing, right? One of the things, the testimonies that always cracks me up is the first thing they notice is they're like, I'm here, I see my arms, I see my chest, but I look down, I have no feet, it's just light. And they're like, oh, then they realize they're not in their vessel anymore. They still have the form, like a visual representation of their vessel, but they're not in it anymore. That's one of the first things they notice. So if you wake up in the morning, you see your feet, you're good to go. Still here one more day, make some more memories.